Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Build Stuff 2021, live, online, offline, our state-of-the-art hybrid technology and software developer conference. Coming up next, a talk that I'm looking forward to seeing very much because I keep hearing about these things called logic apps, and lots of folks are talking about logic apps, and it's something I've been meaning to look up for a while. So now, along with the rest of you, I'm going to just sit back and watch, because here to tell us all about logic apps anywhere and everywhere, please give a big warm welcome to our Build Stuff stage, Sandro Pereira.
Thank you, Dylan. Before I start, my name again is Sandro Pereira. I'm Head of Integration at DevScope, a consultant company based in Porto, Portugal. I'm a Microsoft MVP for the last 11 years. I was a Beanstalk MVP, an Integration MVP, and now I'm an Azure MVP. And my work is about enterprise integration on-premise, on the cloud, wherever it fits. You use Beanstalk and logic apps and other Azure integration technologies behind that. So this is my daily job. You have my contacts there, my email, my LinkedIn, blog. Feel free to reach me out if you have any questions, you want to discuss something off topic, on topic, you name it, just send me an email, we can chat. And today, the session is not to discuss what is your best tool to address enterprise integration. You can use a lot of tools to do that, both on premise or in the cloud. Today, I'm going to talk about how you can use logic apps in your integration daily job. What is the logic app experience and what is the existing integration challenge that exists, and we can use logic app to address these needs. Okay, so today we talk a lot about cloud and cloud stuff, but in reality they are integration challenge everywhere. They are on-premise integration challenge that you need to integrate systems and products inside the client without going to the cloud. We have now this huge amount of hybrid integration that part of the logic is on-premise and the other part is on the cloud, and more needs are appearing every day to cloud integration. So a lot of new servers are arriving every day and appear every day on the cloud, and they are 100% cloud. And we need to integrate also these cloud-to-cloud variety of products. If you look back a few months ago, if you have a need to integrate on-premise systems, you have mainly two products of Microsoft: SQL servers using integration service for ETL scenarios, and you have this product called Beanstalk Server that is the main product for Microsoft to do on-premise integration. It exists since 2000 and is now going on the 2020 release. So 20 years of existing doing on-premise integration. Of course, we can use Azure Integration Service, mainly API management, logic app, service bus, or we can create a HISE environment that is a dedicated environment for logic app, because when we speak about logic app, at least 5 months ago, we associate that with serverless technology. It's 100% cloud and is maintained by Microsoft. So we didn't have a dedicated environment, and some clients actually need that, and there was a need for create this ICE environment that is a tenant dedicated to that specific client, and you can do more stuff inside that because it's not shared. But again, we had to have these connectivity between the cloud and on-premise. You have to have a VPN, a data gateway, or express route, but because in reality, we are leaving the facilities and come back to the facilities again. So it was not 100% on-premise, okay? And of course, inside that, Azure, we have a lot of more service that you probably need to use to do some amazing integration solutions like integration account, data factory, storage account, Azure functions, key vault, well, application insights, you name it. There are a lot of other services that you need to associate with the Azure integration service to actually create a robust and viable solution for integrated systems. So recently appears a new one, that is Logic App Standard. So Logic App Standard runs on Azure function runtime, and it basically can run anywhere. It can run on a Docker, a Kubernetes. That means that you can actually do on-premise integration without leaving the facilities and do on-premise to on-premise solutions. And we are going to speak more about that later on. Of course, if you are doing hybrid integration, well, you can bind all of these technologies together. No, we can use Beanstalk to on-premise if you already have Beanstalk in your clients, and we can start moving all of these new requirements or modernize some part of the integration solutions to put on Azure and use these amazing tools like API management to have a better control and a front end of your exposed service. You can use Logic Apps to connect to thousands of systems on Azure or SaaS products that you find everywhere nowadays. You can use service bus to do some kind of persistence, some guarantee of the message to be delivered, retry mechanism, and so on and so forth. And again, using all of these network layer, VPN, data gateway, express route, and sometimes WCF relays, why not? And depending on the case, on the scenario, what you already have built in place, that you can actually connect SaaS service with legacy systems like IBM mainframes. And you may think that, well, that's old school, still exists, and they are not going anywhere. So if you look to enterprise integration and you are thinking about banking, banks and all of these major clients, they will probably have an IBM mainframe there. And you need to connect with them. And you need to use the old school tradition because they are not going anywhere, believe me. So this can be modernized, and you actually can use a Logic App to connect to legacy systems easily, directly, or using other products of Microsoft like Beanstalk Server to do that job. So there are a lot of new capabilities nowadays to do that. If you already have Beanstalk, keep going with Beanstalk and start doing some amazing stuff in Logic App. If you are not having Beanstalk, you can start using Logic App to do all of these integration capabilities. And if you are thinking about doing a cloud or a pure cloud integration, that nowadays is what is more normal to do. So most of the new enterprise integrations in Microsoft are being using Azure Integration Service because there are no servers to maintain. So if you are looking to BizTalk, you need to have an infrastructure on-premise that you need to calculate what is the volume of message that you may think that is the high peak of your period to process. Like if you are processing 1 million messages, in some cases you have to have an infrastructure to be able to handle that 1 million message, and you don't face this issue on the cloud because, well, it's serverless. You can do that easily, and most of the new cases are appearing on the cloud, and you have this as a starting point, Azure Integration Service, that label of products that mainly is composed by API management, Logic App standard, Logic App consumption, and service bus, and Data Factory that is missing here. Again, integration service environment is a subset of that. It's a dedicated environment for using Azure Integration Service. But don't think that this is the only service that you need to do enterprise integration. No, you can do a lot of integrations using function apps and sometimes binding function apps with logic apps to do some mapping, some C# functions to help your integration scenario, using key vaults for storing secrets like usernames and passwords to connect to, I don't know, a database or IBM mainframe. So you don't want to put these kind of credentials inside your logic app as a code. You need to hide them, or it's better to hide them for security. So you use a key vault, and then you extract that values from the key vault and pass to your logic app to connect to your systems and applications. You can use an integration account, and this is more for business to business scenarios. So if you have partners that need to change ADI or Rosetta message, and these are more enterprise message standards to use, well, you need to have partners and agreements and certificates and all of these configurations that are based on the standard protocols that exist for years. You probably need an integration account to use that. And if you use schemas and mappings, you also have this integration account, event hub, storage account, app service, data factory for ETL process. Because again, if you look to integration, is not only sending message. If you have to do an ETL process, you are not using BizTalk or Logic Apps, you are going to use data factors for sure, or integration service if it's on purpose. And again, a lot of other diverse services like connections, custom connectors, app configurations, Fleur for medicine systems and so on. Well, you name it. SQL servers to store some data, log analytics, App Insight for monitoring and some kind of metrics, and even you can use Power BI for doing some kind of dashboards. Well, there are a lot of services that you can use together for achieving all these Azure integration solutions in a very effective and robust way. And again, you can also use Logic App standard, because Logic App standards runs anywhere. So if you look to Logic App consumption, you are going to speak a little more in details about that in the next slides. Logic App consumption is a serverless service. It runs on Azure. It's maintained by Microsoft. Logic App Standard is a new Logic App type that appears probably 3 months, 4 months ago, or at least is in go live 3 or 4 months ago. and it can run everywhere. It can run on Azure, it can run in a app service, it can run on a Docker or Kubernetes or in other cloud provider if you want, okay? So what is this logic app consumption and standard? They are logic apps for sure, but what are the difference between one and the other? One of the main reasons that Microsoft decided to create this logic app standard in a different way is because the need of integrating on-premise environments without going to the cloud. So in this case, you can run everywhere. Again, logic app consumption is a serverless product. It doesn't run on-premise. You have to go outside your facilities and come back inside. And sometimes this is a nonsense. It causes latency on the overall solution. And if you want to achieve low latency, you have to have the stuff close together and not go into the cloud, go back to on-premise. No, again. This logic app consumption is serverless. You can create your business process and you can have an integration service environment dedicated only for you. It's more expensive, but again, you have a dedicated environment. You can speed up more the stuff. You can tuning for having less throughput, because there are some throughput limits on how many calls that you can have, how many logic apps you can have, and these using this custom environment, personal environment, you can get higher numbers on that because you are not affecting the other clients. And the standard is and again, consumption, you pay by consumption, like the name says. You pay if you use more, you will pay more. If you lose less, you are not paying more for that. You are not being billed for that. Logic app standard is a compute-based logic app. You pay by computation. So you need, for example, to have a app service running that, and you have to choose a plan because it's a computer running that. So you pay in advance per month that computing. And then you probably have more costs about the executions on the shapes that you are also executing. But yeah, you have to do this calculation. But again, you can use it everywhere. You can run on a Docker container or on a Kubernetes, and it creates, and this is where the stuff can change a little. It contains two types of workflows, and the workflow is the logic app, the business process. They call it now stateful workflows and stateless workflows. And the difference is that stateless normally don't have this run history behind. So if you want these to be kind of request response with a small low latency, if it fails, it fails. You retry later on and send back. So kind of try and forget. You can create this stateless workflow because it doesn't persist the data in every steps of the workflow. So it is more fast to execute than the traditional workflow that is a stateless workflow, because this stateless workflow will persist and store all of these inbounds, outbounds in your run history, and this will bring some penalties on your execution time. So again, stateless workflow is what is normally the logic app consumption. So if you look to the logic app consumption, these are stateful workflows. Now we have a new one, stateless, that you can configure to say, I don't want run history. I just want you to run fast as much as you can, and Sorry, I will deal with that later. And so in practical terms, if you go into your Azure portal, you go into your subscription, of course, you create an Azure resource that is somewhere in some region. And on that Azure resource, you will start to create a lot of your logic app consumptions. They are serverless, okay? So you create one by one, you deploy one by one, that's it. And on that same Azure resource, you can create different type of resources. API management, service bus, you name it, you can do whatever you want. The logic app standard, it's different. So you have, again, this Azure resource. It's mandatory to have in all type of resource. And in this case, you are, okay, running on the cloud. Okay? You create your logic app standard service, and inside that service, you can create your workflows. That is kind of or less the logic apps that we see on the left side. So you start to create inside that resource your stateless workflows or stateless or stateful workflows inside that. And on that same resource group, you can create different logic app standards, apps, and having different kind of workflows inside. And again, on that same resource group, you can create other service, Azure service. On the left side, on consumption, it's logic app is a deployment. You can deploy an individual, all of these different logic apps. On the right side, on the Azure logic app standard, a logic app standard is a container of workflows. You deploy all of them in once. So you cannot deploy inside only one. You deploy everything. Again, they are running in the Azure function app runtime. This is more the same if you are using an Azure function app. You create an Azure function app, and inside that function app, you create several functions, and you deploy that functions or not. So it's kind of the same, but in this case is logic app, but the ideal is the same, okay? And again, it runs virtual everywhere. So you can put it in an app service, in a Docker, in a Kubernetes. So it can run on Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. That's the point. That was the point, the main goal point of creating this logic app standard version of the logic apps. But also having these two kinds of logic app brings some confusion. They are more or less the same, but they are different, okay? They have a different runtime, and they have, at the moment, different functionalities. So logic app standard brings stateful and stateless workflow. Stateless workflow doesn't exist on the logic app consumption. You have the local environment in Visual Studio Code, and we are going to speak later on this after the demo. So Visual Studio Code has a full logic app design capabilities. It supports local project, breakpoint debugging, before and after the action. It can run locally. I can start building my stuff locally on my VM, and without deployment, I can test it in my local machine. And then after all tests are successful, I'm okay, ready to go. I can deploy anywhere I want. And it has a new logic app designer. It has more or less the same capabilities, but the designer is more compact, making easier for you to work and read all your business flow that can be quite complex sometimes, and can become bigger and large. So we need to scroll from the left, from the right, bottom to up, and so on and so forth. And having this more compact design will facilitate you how to read and make changes and develop your business process. Again, once more, the logic app developer consumption still doesn't have this new logic app design. I assume some point in the next future, or at least I hope, this kind of difference will merge, and we have kind of similar design and developer experience between logic app consumption and logic app standard. You can create custom connectors extensions, so you can actually create your custom connectors on premise to connect your systems without they run on Azure. They bring some features of the integration account. So if you are using logic app consumption and you need to use XML schemas or XSLT mappings, the standard way or the out of the box way is to have an integration account. That's expensive. That's quite expensive to have schemas mapping and agreement. So if you don't need business to business, but you need XML, you still need to have an integration account. And it is expensive, quite expensive. And this logic app standard brings some of these new or existing capabilities of the integration account out of the box without the need of integration account. So now with the logic app standard, we actually can have our XML schemas and our XSLT mapping and do this XML to XML integration. I know that nowadays everyone speak about JSON liquid template, and it's really fancy to do and have. But in reality, in the integration enterprise scenarios, what we normally use is XML and flat files, text files, okay? CSV files. Text files is indeed the most used format to send messages across systems, even today, okay? So I know it's good to have JSON, but you need to look at also these old systems and you need to integrate them with new systems. So XML is really important. And now we have a cheaper way to achieve that. So let's see a little about this logic app standard and logic app consumptions also. So let's bring my machine here. So let me first go to the logic app consumption. This is the old way to do the stuff, or the oldest way to do the stuff. So when we speak in logic app, normally we speak about consumption, and we have this kind of design. So even if you go to the portal, and let me bring the Azure portal here on screen, we can go to the logic app. I will probably, I think I have here some test. Okay. And we can, I'm not going to say how to create a logic app because it's all the same story. Just create new logic app, naming resource. We have consumption or standard, and that's it. And next, and go to the editor. Okay, it's kind of the same experience with all the service. You just need different configurations, and it opens a design. I can just delete all of these to be. So normally it opens a blank design. You can use a lot of templates to start using based on a template already. Then it will put some shapes inside that. Well, let's start with the blank, and then we can go for all the triggers that we have. triggers is the starting of we call the first shape as the trigger because it's the one that triggers the logic app. It can be a HTTP request, it can be a service bus, it can be a scheduling, well, you name it. There are a lot of connections that you can use to get the data from the systems. So in this case, let's use when a HTTP request is received, and here we are saying that we are getting requests from it is an HTTP request. It doesn't matter if it's an XML or a JSON. You can specify that it's a JSON, but it's an HTML request. And then later on, you can start building actions. So I can say, okay, let me create a variable here and initialize a variable for supporting, let's say, var support. And this is a Boolean or a string. It's a string. I can put the default value or not. That's it. I can say control conditions, can do some kind of conditions. I can, if it's true, oh, sorry. I can use Outlook connections, for example, to send an email. Oh, no, sorry. Of course, I need to configure that according to your to, from, body, etc. I'm not going to put the logic inside, but you can see you can have like CRM. This is Microsoft, but it can be outside Microsoft. There are a lot of systems that you can connect, and even you can connect to internal permissions like for example, to do some hybrid stuff, you can use Beanstalk, and you have a way to connect to Beanstalk, send a message to Beanstalk. And again, Beanstalk is another product for on-premise, Microsoft product for on-premise integration, or you can actually create some Oracle. There are Oracle inside also, or IBM stuff and mainframes that exist already also. DB2, IBM 3270, MQ, Informix, you name it, okay? There are a lot of SaaS products. There are a lot of legacy products that is already support on Logic App. And this is basically the online experience. Of course, the online experience is good for you to start, but not good for real case scenarios, because then you have kind of a developer environment, production, and Q&A, and you need to deploy across these systems, and using the Azure Portal is not the ideal situation. So we can have this Visual Studio, and it has the same experience. But here you can actually associate with the DevOps, and with the DevOps pipeline, you can actually deploy to multiple environments in the easy and straightforward way. But again, it's the same experience, the same large shapes that you see, the same stuff, because actually it is a browser embedded here that you are doing this stuff. And then we have this Logic App consumption. In Logic App consumption, as you already see on the screen, it's quite small. Okay, let me stop here because I'm running here. So you have the same experience, but in a different way. So instead of this shape become large, it opens a window on the side, and you have the same configuration that you see on the Logic App consumption. Still the same connectors if you are using the app service. Everything is almost the same. Again, the runtime is different. You have a different design here, and you have different capabilities. Also, for example, if I go in here, I have now the opportunity and the options to create some XML schemas, and I have here the maps. Well, it's not yet the best experience, because is XSLT. We don't have a graphical design here, at least embedded in Visual Studio Code, but we can actually use without the integration account. Okay. And again, you have the same experience. You can create, add an action, but it has a more compact design. And here I'm running locally my my code. So I didn't deploy yet to, for example, to Azure, the Azure portal. I don't have this resource anywhere without being here on my machine. And I can start, for example, start debugging, okay? It starts run my Azure function runtime behind. I need to have, for example, SQL Server or the storage runtime also to be able to run this locally. But yeah, everything starts running, and it creates everything for me, just waiting for them to be ready. And then I can use, for example, Postman to invoke this and try my logic apps. Okay. Well, let me see if it's ready or not. Let me close my Visual Studio also, just to be better, and it is there. So you see that I have here my my endpoints, and I'm using that endpoints here with the trigger and so on, and then I can say, hey, send. And I already specify some breakpoints behind. So you see that I am in breakpoint mode. Let me see if I can put this larger. So I actually set up a breakpoint. Well, it is not the best debugging system that you will find. So if you are debugging C# code, you have a better experience than this one for sure. But at least we have some kind of debugging, you know? And I can do F10 and F5 and so on. So I can actually see that I get input Sandro Pereira here. You see that this is the input there. And then I say F5 and say response. I'm going to start my response, and then boom, I will probably have this. Hello, Bill, I am Sandro Pereira there. Okay. What I'm doing there is basically, well, I'm sending first name, last name in lowercase, then I'm going to put uppercase, just a simple scenario. Okay. And I can do the same with XML. So in this case, it's XML. I'm doing almost the same stuff. And I say start send again. I can do some breakpoint inside. It's going to have the breakpoint F5 and F5 there. And F5, I have more stuff here because I do need to do the transformation. And I will add the response saying, okay, this is an XML response. And I have almost the same experience and on both ways. And here again, it's an HTML request. As you see, I don't have any endpoint because it's not deployment. I can use the XML validation to validate the body that I receive on the HTTP request against the schemas that I have on my logic app standard app, and I can do the transformation based on the maps that I have on my logic app standard. Okay, so you can have this almost same experience in different kind of design, but you can do on premise, on the cloud, anywhere. Now, I mean, I already showed that on the demo. We have different tools to do the same job and to develop our logic app and our integration solutions. We have the Azure Portal. It's simple, it's quick, it's fast. No, then we have the Visual Studio, kind of the tools that we as developer are familiar with it, And we have this now Visual Studio Code that is a lightweight and free tool for doing that. Unfortunately, there are no perfect tools to do all of the job. So if you're going to the Azure portal, it is the quickest way. Of course, almost of the new and the introduction documentation are based on the portal. So they will guide you to use the portal to do that. It has a better performance because it's doing the portal is quite faster than using Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. And it probably gets more updates faster than the designing tools on the Visual Studio. But there is a lack of CI/CD. Naming convention is quite hard to achieve. And then there's kind of no proper source code and so on and so forth. So it has some disadvantages. So if you're going to the Azure portal, the Visual Studio, it has full CI/CD support. It has full support for Logic App consumption. Well, we all use Visual Studio for almost everything, but it has also some limitation. It requires a license. And nowadays, there are some other developers, the citizen developers that also can do the job. No, there are some bugs on the design tools. It's less performance in terms of the design run experience on the design, and Visual Studio does not support Logic App Standard at the moment. So if you are using Logic App Standard, Visual Studio is out of the equation. And then we have this Visual Studio Code. If you are going to speak with Logic App consumption, it supports CI/CD, of course, but it doesn't support the Logic App design. It's only the Logic App designer is only in view mode. You have to do everything with a JSON file. So you have to do everything manually. Of course, it's an open source tool, but I'm seeing this is a nonsense to do everything manually when we have a good design available. But we are going to speak with Logic App consumption standard. That's a different stuff. So it has a full Logic App design support. It has new design, of course. It supports stateful and stateful, runs local, debugging. But again, it has some limitation. If you are going to use Logic App Standard, if you are going to use Logic App consumption, it's read-only. So kind of depending on your scenario, you are going to choose Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, or the Azure portal. We don't have yet one tool to do everything in the appropriate way. And with that, I want to thank you for the time. I hope you enjoy that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me out. I think we are still have 2 minutes.
We do indeed. Thank you so much, Sandro. That was great. And yes, folks, we have a couple of minutes for questions. If any of you does have any questions, please drop them over in the chat on Pine. And don't see any questions on there yet. Pardon me. But yeah, that's really interesting, particularly the stuff around, the developer story and things like continuous integration, the continuous deployment, and all these kind of concerns about it. So great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandro. We don't see any questions in the Pine tool, so we're going to drop in the Zoom link. If anyone does have any questions, you're very welcome to jump on that link, go over, join Sandro in there, and talk about Logic Apps. Or Portuguese food, I guess, if you like. That's probably okay too.
It's also a good topic.
So yeah, the link for that, Sandro, I'll drop that in here in our chat so you can see it. Folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you, Sandro, for joining us this afternoon. We'll be back in, I think, about 20 minutes with the next final session of Build Stuff 2021. Anyone has any questions for Sandro? I'm going to drop the link in on the Pine chat now. You can jump in over there. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Bye-bye.